Hi class, welcome to week 5 of EED 675 bilingual and multilingual teaching strategies. Over the last several weeks, we have started to lay the foundation for the rest of the semester. The first few weeks, we looked at what are the new ELD/ELA Common Core standards. What are the best practices for English language learners? How do we identify their ELD development? Now, last week, we started looking at some of the theoretical foundations for language development. We looked at a few theorists. We looked at Virginia Collier's PRISM model and how she said that students need to have social and cultural processes at the middle. And so then we see the academic and the cognitive development is all connected to the social and cultural processes. I hope you all started to think about this in terms of Common Core, because we remember we established that now language use and being able to analyze text, not only verbally but in written language, is really central for these new standards. And going back to Virginia Collier's PRISM model, she had social and cultural processes at the root of language development. We also looked at Stephen Krashen, and I really appreciated many of you all's comments in the forum this week about Krashen's video. It is a little bit funny in certain parts. However, he makes two important points. One I want you all to really get is his whole idea of comprehensible input. Comprehensible input comes from you, the teachers. What does comprehensible input mean? Comprehensible input means that you are digging in your knapsack of strategies to support and scaffold the language and content development of students. We do this by speaking slowly. We do this by pre-teaching the vocabulary. We do this by using thinking maps. And last but not least, one of the key theorists that we're going to get into is Jim Cummins. You looked at several of Jim Cummins' theories. One of his most popular is the whole idea of Bix and Kalps, right? Social and academic language development. Now, the thing that separates our English learners and our EOs is that the EOs are learning just the content, but the ELs are learning the content and the language, and they need those language supports in order to actually get the content. Now, another key factor that's crucial as part of Jim Cummins' ideas is this whole idea of language transfer, which leads into our topic for today, which is code switching. Now, I know some of you are saying, we no longer have bilingual programs in California. Why do we need to know about how children use two languages in the classroom? Well, one of the important things that you have to remember from Jim Cummins' model is what a child has in their first language transfers over to the second language. And also, we as teachers can draw upon what the child has in the first language to teach them the second language. This does not necessarily mean you have to speak their first language. Of course, that is ideal. But in the world of technology, in the world where we have so many translation applications such as Google Translate, Babelfish.com, thinking about connections between the first and second language becomes critical. Also, when we think about those new standards, part 3, it looks at how we can have students make that connection between their first and their second language. Now, if you all remember last week, we talked about this whole idea of additive and subtractive bilinguals. Some of you are additive bilinguals. For example, myself, I'm fluent in Spanish, but I learned Spanish at a later age. Some of you grew up learning two languages in the household, but you lost one. You therefore became a subtractive bilingual. Your ELs that you currently have in your classroom, if you have ELs or ELs that you've had in the past, many of them are what you call subtractive bilinguals. What has happened is they're coming to school with two languages, but because we no longer have bilingual education, they are starting to speak mostly English. They are starting to become dominant in mostly English, okay? But this still doesn't mean that we cannot tap into their prior knowledge of their first language in our instruction and use that again as a scaffold. Remember, our key is to have a knapsack of strategies that we can use to support our English language learners and bilingual students in getting the content. So today's lecture, you are going to look at the different types of code switching. When do people code switch? Why do people code switch? Now, you will have 3 activities as we usually do. Your first activity, you are going to look at the Reyes article, Reyes 2004. What she did is she went into a school and she looked at children in different contexts, social and academic, right? BICS and CALPS. She looked at how they were using code switching and how this impacted their academic development in the long term. So, your first activity is to analyze a segment of Reyes's article and think about just the impact of code switching for students. For your second activity, you are going to be watching several YouTube clips of different types of code switching. You will then go into your activity handouts and you'll look at a list of several different types of code switching. And you will identify the types of code switching that occur in these videos. You'll then write a little dialogue to give us an example of one of those types of code switching. Okay. The last thing you'll do is you will think about strategies that you can use to support transfer from the L1 to the L2. Now, in a few of the slides later, you'll see that I talk about this whole idea of positive transfer and negative transfer. Positive transfer, again, is when we have a word or a cognate that's similar across languages. So, for example, in Spanish, mathematics, matemáticas, right? We have several different types of cognates from Spanish to English. Now, in languages such as Japanese or Arabic, you certainly won't see as many types of cognates. Nonetheless, for those considering that 93% of the students in the LAUSD who are ELs are Spanish speakers, being aware of how to use cognates is extremely important. So we want to use positive transfer. Now, negative transfer, I'll give you an example. In Spanish, you have the word embarazada. So as an English speaker, we will naturally say, oh, embarazada, that means embarrassed. So if you try to say something, you'll say, oh, estoy embarazada, right? But embarazada actually means that you're pregnant. So that is what we call a false cognate. Okay, so for your last activity, you'll be looking for either a bilingual book, a bilingual website, and you'll think about a short activity that you could use to help students to transfer the language, okay? Just a reminder that the literature review is due next week. If you have any questions or comments, by all means, feel free to email me, to call me. You're welcome to send me those drafts, but you need to send me the draft ASAP because I will not review drafts a day before the paper is due. All right? Everyone have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Ciao.